Good evening and welcome to Daily Red Devil for all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. I hope everyone is doing well on this Monday evening. We're back with another massive show to bring you guys tonight. But before we jump into that, please give me a small favour and smash a like on today's video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and let's get straight on into it. On tonight's show, we are going to be talking a bit about Mason Greenwood with a couple of different journalists over in Spain reporting that he will leave the club, Manchester United, this summer, and Barcelona and Atletico Madrid are apparently two of the clubs who are in for him. There's also been a fee quoted, which we'll talk about as well. We'll also be talking a little bit more about Dan Ashworth. The story seems to be going on and on and on and on. I'll be giving you my thoughts on that. Lots to get into this evening as well. There's a bit of an update on some changes, more changes at Manchester United that we'll be talking about. So let's get straight on into it. And as always, guys, I invite you to have your say on all things Manchester United in the comment section below. So get involved. Let's start off with Dan Ashworth then. So we can confirm that Manchester United and Dan Ashworth have reached an agreement in principle for Dan Ashworth to become the new director of football at Manchester United. The deal is effectively done between Dan Ashworth and Man United. Dan Ashworth has handed in his notice at Newcastle. He's been put on gardening leave, which effectively means that he can no longer work for Newcastle, but they will keep on paying him. He's got, I believe, 20 months left on his current contract. And now Manchester United are in negotiations with Newcastle to try and get him out of that gardening leave. There's been some absolutely crazy amounts of money being floated around today. 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. The news I'm getting today is that Man United do not want to pay anything close to that. They don't see the need to help Newcastle's financial issues. So for anybody who's unaware, Newcastle United are in an absolute mess financially. They spent a fortune. They bought people like Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes. They bought Alexander Isak. They've spent hundreds of millions of pounds over the last couple of windows, right? And remember, Newcastle think they are a big club now. But for the last 20 years, they've been a sleeping giant, haven't they? They don't turn over massive amounts of money. If you compare Newcastle's turnover with Manchester United's turnover, it's honestly, it would be astronomical, the level. So Newcastle United's turnover was 180 million last year. Okay? Which, I mean, obviously that sounds like a lot, but if you compare that to Manchester United, our turnover last year was 746 million. So our turnover was nearly 5 times what Newcastle's was. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that apparently the narrative coming out of United is that why would they help Newcastle, who in January were looking like they were going to have to sell people like Almiron, looking like even Trippier was going to go to Bayern Munich. Like, they were having to sell some of their best players, or at least entertain that idea, because they're so worried about their financial situation. They obviously hoped that they would be in the top 4 this season. They hoped that they would progress in the Champions League, and they haven't done that. They've had a poor season, let's be honest. You know, people will say, oh, Erik ten Hag out, like all the rest of it. Look at Newcastle's team this season. They're sat in 8th position, 7 points behind us. And they're really going to suffer. And the reason I'm going on about this is because obviously Newcastle are holding out for this large amount of money, because from what I've been told, they are hoping that this will help their financial situation in the summer, because that will be an extra 10, 15, 20 million coming into their club. And Man United aren't willing to do that. You know, they're not going to do it. And I agree. I think, you know, hold out for it. Let's see what else people are saying in the chat this evening then. Let's see what people are saying. I'm not sure what this person's saying here. Somebody's asking about joining the members club. So if you want to join the members club, you should just have to click the $sign in the chat, or I'll drop a link in the chat to do it now. You should be able to do it that way. It's only 99p a month. So obviously if you are in a position to join, then, you know, please do get involved. Where is that? Let me find the link for it. I'm just going to put it in the chat now. Everybody's just joined. Smash a like on the video if you haven't already. Let me just find this link. All right, I'm just going to drop the link in the chat now. So if anybody does want to join the members club, you should be able to do it by following the link in the chat. Right, there you go. So yeah, we'll keep you updated on that one. But from what I'm hearing today, Man United are not going to give Newcastle any ridiculous amount of money. And I just want to say this, right? No director of football ever has gone for a transfer fee. This will be the first time ever. Remember that Dan Ashworth came from Brighton, I think it was 18 months ago? They didn't pay any transfer fee. Like, this would be the first of its kind, and I just don't think that it's a good look for Man United to be known as the club that paid 20 million for a member of staff. I just think that's ridiculous. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I know some of you will say, oh, well, the money he'll save on transfer fees and all the rest of it, like, you know, that's obviously a valid opinion, but I just think that if we just say to Newcastle, like, we'll give you a couple of million, take it or leave it. If they say, okay, we'll leave it, then effectively they're going to have to keep paying Dan Ashworth for 20 months, which they're just not going to do. Like, that's the thing you have to remember. Now that he's asked to leave, they can't force him to stay, and they've put him on gardening leave, which means they have to keep paying him until the end of his contract. So that's the situation with Dan Ashworth. And there is another big bit of breaking news that came out a couple of hours ago surrounding the Manchester United kind of backroom staff. And this is coming from Fabrizio Romano, obviously, in my opinion, the best football journalist out there. And he is reporting that MLS side Minnesota United have approached Manchester United staff coach Eric Ramsey. So Eric Ramsey is the guy who is the set piece coach. You'll see him on the touchline sometimes. He's got quite dark hair. I think he's quite young. I think he's about mid-30s. He's got dark hair. He came into Manchester United as a set piece coach a couple of years ago. But apparently Minnesota United have approached Man United to take Eric Ramsey, who is one of the staff members, to become their new manager. So it looks like he's going to go. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I didn't ever think he was good enough. I think we need a massive uphaul in not just like the CEO, the director of football, the scouts, but the people around Eric Ten Hag. Obviously, let Eric Ten Hag keep his assistant manager, but people like Steve McLaren, people like Darren Fletcher, this Eric Ramsey guy, like, are they really the best in the world? Are you really telling me that Darren Fletcher's the best technical director when he's never had a job in football in his life other than playing? I don't think so. Are you really telling me that Steve McLaren, who, let's be honest, in my opinion, is definitely past it? I know, you know, Steve McLaren's been going for a long time. I know he's a legend of sport and all the rest of it, but are you really telling me that Steve McLaren is like a good assistant manager for Eric Ten Hag? I don't think so personally, you know. I mean, if you look at his time before that, right? Steve McLaren's last job was working for Derby County. Before that, he was at QPR. Then he was at Derby County, and then he was at Newcastle as the manager, and that was 10 years ago. So, like, I don't know. Anyway, that's just my take on it, and I think that if we can move out some of these people from behind the scenes and bring in better people, I'm all for it, to be honest. Let's see what people are saying in the chat this evening. Pig Teat says, pay the money they want for Ashworth. He'll be worth every penny. I don't argue that he'll be worth the money, mate. I just think it sets a bad beginning if they're spending 20 million, on a director of football. I just think that's crazy. I'm just not into it personally. Urban said, and from what I'm hearing this today, Manchester United aren't into it either. They're not going to give Newcastle any kind of money like that. Even 10 million apparently is too much. Urban says, Kieran, why could clubs not just cancel the contract? I mean, Ashworth could say, I have a new contract in place with United. Cancel the Newcastle one, everyone is happy. It's something to do with contractual law, you know, employment law, where they effectively can't leave one club and then go to another club and tell them all of their secrets, you know? Because he could just go and say, oh, we were going to sign all these players at Newcastle, let's sign them here at United. Somebody saying in the chat that apparently Brighton got 7 million for Dan Ashworth. Let's have a look. I thought they didn't, because, you know, for the narrative that's been made out today is that, you know, Man United will be the first club to pay for a director of football. How much did Newcastle pay for Ashworth? Brighton. Okay, so when Dan Ashworth was at Brighton, it says Newcastle will not appoint a sporting director until November unless they pay compensation to Brighton, which is believed to be around 5 million. So they paid 5 million to Brighton. So I kind of get it. You would want to hold out for your 5 million at least, wouldn't you? So you get your money back. Big ups to Malps, who's been a member for 2 months of the Daily Red Devil membership club. He says, if Sir Jim Ratcliffe pulls this off, I'll be the first to apologise. Yeah, of course. So will I, mate. You know, this isn't a contest of who was right and who was wrong and all the rest of it. You know, we're all in this together. We're all United fans. We need to try and stay united. We need to try and stay as one and not be divided. I know that most people that I speak to, most people in the fan base seem to want Qatar to begin with. And, I don't think people wanted Qatar as such. People just wanted the debt gone. They wanted full ownership. They wanted all of these things that were promised with Qatar, The Qatari ownership promised us all of these things. But in hindsight, if you actually think about it, right, Sir Jim Ratcliffe didn't really promise anything. And that was heavily criticised by people like myself because he said nothing. He kept very quiet. He didn't really give us anything. And in some ways, maybe that's actually better. Maybe that's actually better that Jim Ratcliffe was quiet through the whole bidding process. Whereas you've got Jim Ratcliffe who's there just being quiet and confident that he would hit his 25% stake. And then you had Qatar who were promising us David Beckham, a new stadium, the debt gone, the Glazers out, like all of these things which just sounded incredible. It sounded like you were in a dream. It was very easy to be attracted to that, Don says Dan Ashworth will save 20 million in his first window. And then you've got Rajat who says 20 million is not worth it. Yeah. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Pig Teat says, why don't we try and swap Anthony for Ashworth? Yeah, maybe. Paul says, Kieran, is the Jim Ratcliffe takeover fully done? So it's been approved by the Premier League, which is the most important thing. I think the one final thing is the FA. So the Premier League have signed off, and now he's just waiting for the FA, which is obviously the governing body, the Football Association in the UK, to sign it off. So it'll probably be in the next week, I would imagine. But as we can see from all of these activities, it's clear that Jim Ratcliffe has got his 25%. He's probably just waiting for some legalities to be pushed over the line. Robbo says, I think it's ridiculous if we pay that amount of money for a director of football. I'll tell you what, guys, let's do a poll. Let's do a poll right now. Everybody who's watching, please smash a like on the video whilst I set up the poll. It doesn't cost you any money, so get involved. And if you're new as well to the channel, make sure you subscribe as well. Bottom right-hand corner, doesn't cost any money. Let's have a quick look. So the poll's going to be this. Do you think paying 20 million for Dan Ashworth is worth it? Anybody who's watching back on repeat can obviously just get involved in the comment section. It's a simple question. Do you think Manchester United paying £20 million for Dan Ashworth is worth it? Yes or no? Ian in the chat is saying the FA cleared it last week. And then you've got Pig Teats who say, I'd pay 30 million to get Ashworth in. Wow. Right, let's talk about Mason Greenwood quickly then, and then I'll come back to Dan Ashworth. So there's a couple of different journalists over in Spain this afternoon reporting a similar story, and the headline is this. It says, Mason Greenwood will not return to Manchester United, and the club hopes to get a transfer fee of £34 million for him. It says Barcelona and Atletico Madrid have both shown interest in Mason Greenwood. What do I think of that? 34 million. I mean, in all honesty, it doesn't sound like very much, but when you consider that I think he's got 1 year left of his contract, when you consider that he's probably not going to be able to play football in England again, just because of that whole situation that happened. Whether you think that's right or wrong is obviously a debate for another day. But yeah, he probably won't come and play football again in England. Yeah, his contract expires in June 2025. I can see him staying in Spain, to be honest. I think given the current circumstances, like if somebody said to me now, you can have 34 million for Mason Greenwood, and that would then be 100% profit because he's come through the youth academy, I would think it would be on the low side, but I probably would take it, being completely honest, just because I think like he's not going to come back to United. It's just not going to happen. So it's easy for us to say, oh, he's better than that, he's worth more than that, but you can only sell him for what someone's willing to pay, because it's not like we can say no and he'll come and play for United again. That just simply won't happen. So I think somewhere around 34 is a bit laughable, but I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, how much did Barcelona pay for Rafinha? That's a good... Let's have a look. So Barcelona paid 50 million for Rafinha, pounds. Rafinha is 27... Yeah, I mean, it should be somewhere around that kind of mark, realistically. I think, they bought him from Leeds, Rafinha, for 50 million. I think Mason Greenwood should be 50 million. You know, based on the fact that Rafinha is a right winger, Mason Greenwood's a right winger. I would probably say that Mason Greenwood's better than Rafinha in my opinion. But just for argument's sake, you know, it's buying it from a Premier League club. They both play in the same position. They're both probably putting up similar stats to one another. So yeah, I think around 50 million would be a fair price. 34 million, I think, would be a bit laughable, but we don't really have that many options now. But let me know what you guys think in the comments section. How much do you think would be a fair price for Mason Greenwood? Chris says the hope is that you'd get 2 clubs in a bidding war. Yeah, of course. Kevin says that's too cheap. It has to be 54 million or more. Fred says, what do you think his replacement will cost? I mean, that's a good question, isn't it? It's a really good question. It depends, doesn't it? Because Newcastle United have bought players well, I think. They've signed people for reasonable amounts of money, but they've not spent crazy amounts, have they? Like, if you look through some of their signings, I'm just getting it up now. Let's have a look. So they bought Harvey Barnes for 44 million euros. What's that? About 35 million pounds. They bought. How much did they pay for? What's he called? For Anthony Gordon, they paid about 45 million euros for him. Yeah, I think you can get a replacement for that amount of money, personally, but we'll have to wait and see. Yeah, I'm just looking at Newcastle. No wonder Newcastle are desperate for money. They spent 185 million euros last season and only sold 14 million euros worth of players. That's crazy. Let's see. Just gonna have a sip of water quickly. Pig Teat says 34 million with a sell-on clause would be interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point. Rajat says 50 million would be a good price. Irvin says, Kieran, would you use the 20 million to buy Ashworth or to buy a new player / instalments? I think Dan Ashworth will have more impact than a player, just because of what he can do, and the resources and the knowledge and stuff he has. Because you could spend. You could buy another Anthony for 95 million euros and he might flop, and then you've just wasted 95 million euros. So, I think it's undeniable the impact that that Dan Ashworth can have on Manchester United, and we desperately need him going into the transfer window, that's for sure. Florian says, Kieran, why don't you do watch-alongs anymore? I'll be honest with you, mate. The watch-alongs are hard work. They're really hard. Not because I don't like speaking to you lot, but yeah, to sit in front of the camera for like 2 hours with the lights on your face, I don't know. I find it hard to take in the game in the same way, and I quite like now just like sat on the sofa in my living room watching it on the big telly. Like if I'm watching it with you guys doing a watch along, it's on my computer screen. It's just there's quite a lot going on, and I think I can analyze the game better and formulate an opinion when I'm just completely focused on the game, opposed to on chatting to people as well. But maybe I'll start doing the watch alongs again in the future. And I will start doing the match reactions and stuff as well. I think the thing is, right, with these match reactions, I actually think like this is a general opinion across the whole YouTube sphere. I think I need a little bit longer than immediately after the game to do a match reaction. So say, for example, I was going to do a match reaction last night after the Luton game, and I was going to come on and be all negative, saying, oh, that was awful, was horrible to watch, and be really frustrated and all the rest of it. Because watching the game yesterday against Luton, I was frustrated. I didn't really enjoy it. I thought, what the hell am I watching? We're getting outplayed by Luton, blah, blah, blah. I was really negative coming away from it. And then I was thinking, if I go and do a video straight away now, all I'm going to be talking about is how unenjoyable it was, and moaning and all the rest of it, right? And then when I slept on it and when I actually thought about it, I reminded myself, which I said on the show this morning, that the style of football that we're playing at the moment is the only style of football these players are capable of playing. And I actually respect Erik ten Hag for dropping his ego and acknowledging that. Acknowledging that counter-attacking park the bus football is the only way we're going to get top 4 this season. That's it. It's the only way. We haven't had a style of play that's been possession-based, dominating football in 10 years. David Moyes didn't. Louis van Gaal kind of did, but it was very boring. Obviously, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was counter-attacking. Mourinho was counter-attacking. And I don't know. When I watch a game live, I get frustrated because I'm like, this isn't really enjoyable. And interestingly enough, I did a poll on the community section of the channel earlier. And I asked the question this, and I want you guys to get involved in this question as well. So the question is this: is the current Manchester United squad capable of playing Erik ten Hag style football? In brackets, possession-based, passing out from the back, high-press football. Over 1,000 of you voted in this poll, right? 83% of you say no, this current squad is not capable of playing Erik ten Hag style football. And 17% of you said yes, it is. And I agree with the 83%. I genuinely don't believe we're going to see the type of football that a lot of us want to see with this set of players. So yeah, I need to kind of sometimes have a little bit of time after a game to let it all sink in, you know. Fred says, with Chong playing well for Luton, have we slipped up on any of our youth signings we've let go? I don't know, mate. I don't think Chong looked that good, really. Like he looked all right. He looked better than Anthony, but I don't know. I think Mengi was a bit of a loss. I think Mengi's a good player, the centre back. I was a bit sad that he went, but is he ever going to make it? Probably not. They must have thought that Willy Camboala was ahead of him, you know. Yeah. I'm going to wrap the video up here, though, guys. I hope everyone has a lovely rest of your Monday evening. I will be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. for your morning show. Please do smash the like on the video before you leave. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Just before we end the video, the results from the poll. The question was, do you think paying 20 million for Dan Ashworth is worth it? 50% of you say yes. 50% of you say no. That's interesting, isn't it? Anyway, guys, have a great evening. Thank you for joining me this evening. We had some really great discussions. I'll speak to you all at 11 a.m. This has been Daily Red Devil. Have a nice evening.